Hello, everyone. I'm Hector Castillo, Chief Product Officer at Byond, and I'd like to welcome you to today's panel discussion. Today's topic is increasing employee satisfaction for greater growth. And Laurie and myself will be the moderators. Laurie, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Hector. It's good to be here, and I'm looking forward to speaking with our great panelists and you.
Sounds great. And so if you're in the audience, you'll see some of the things that we're sharing via the chat as well. And I'll be asking you to share questions, comments via the chat so that you can either address the panelists directly via the chat or the moderators as well. And we'll be monitoring that. So be sure to submit comments and questions as we are engaging in discussion. And as a reminder, all of you are in listen-only mode. If you encounter any audio issues, be sure to refresh your browser, or you might need to drop off and come back in, depending on the quality of your audio, and you should be able to hear us clearly otherwise. Also, you can submit questions using the chat window, as I mentioned earlier, and we will have a Q&A portion at the end of today's discussion so that you can submit your questions as we go, and we can either answer them during the discussion, or we'll be saving some of those for the Q&A portion. And we are recording today's discussion, so you'll be receiving a link where you can view the content after today's live session on demand. So let's go ahead and get started. You can actually follow us on Twitter or on LinkedIn, and here are the information. And we're also sharing this information with you via the chat, so you don't have to write it down. You should just be able to save that information from the chat so you can reach out to us and follow us on LinkedIn or Twitter. Also, Scott Taylor, a shout out for him because he actually does the editing and production of all the videos that we do. And that's how we deliver the on-demand video after each live session. So thanks a lot, Scott Taylor. A little bit more about us. We make massive positive impact within any organization, any clients that we work with, and we help in achieving fast growth and we work specifically with technology and software companies, and we help them grow, scale, or prepare to exit or acquire other companies, and often obtain the funding that they need or investment they need to do any of these things. So reach out to us if you have any questions regarding any type of help that you need about those services. So it's time now to actually get into discussion. So Laurie, take it away.
Thanks, Hector. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad you're with us today. I'd like to introduce our panelists one by one, and they're going to tell you about their background and experience. First, I'd like to introduce Stephanie Katz, owner of CETA Benefit Consulting Services. Stephanie?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So I have over 35 years in the industry. I like to say that I started when I was 10 years old. I wish. My company, CETA, is located here in North Bethesda. We're in our 25th year of providing custom solutions to meet HR and benefit needs. Our clients span across almost all industries and size, so we work with an owner bringing on a first employee to companies that have north of 10,000 employees. We love to partner with our clients, and we work really hard to put human back in human resources. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. And next, allow me to introduce Sean McDermott. He is the CEO of Windward Consulting. Sean?
Hi, I'm Sean McDermott, CEO of Windward Consulting. Much like Stephanie, we are actually in our 25th year too. I started the company in 1997, and we focus on helping large-scale Fortune 500, Global 1000 companies manage large-scale networks and data centers. So we build a lot of analytical tools and do a lot of systems integration with these customers. And we also do a fair amount of work in the federal government, mostly in the Department of Defense.
Thank you, Sean. And last but not least, Hector Velez. He's the COO of Vector Talent Resources. Hector?
Thank you, Laurie. I really appreciate it. And I'm thrilled to pieces to be here. I'm Hector Velez, CEO of Vector Talent Resources. We provide an integrated staffing solution to our clients around technology, finance and accounting, HR operations, and marketing and communications. My background, I'm an engineer by training, a software engineer at that. But I've been in the people business about 26, 27 years. And I look forward to today's panel discussion and see how we can add value to you and your organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Hector. And now we're going to start our panel discussion. The first question is, and we'll have Stephanie answer this first, is describing the current employment environment, the situation that we find ourselves in, and how has the workforce landscape shifted in the last few months, say the last half of 2021 into 2022. Stephanie?
Okay, so you may have heard the term the Great Resignation, and that's when we are seeing a lot of employees really leave en masse voluntarily from their jobs. And we start thinking about, well, you know, what's going on with that? So we had some wage stagnation amid rising cost of living. A number of individuals got the COVID stimulus payments that gave them a bit more economic freedom. Employees, a number of them were having job dissatisfaction. Others had safety concerns from the pandemic. There's been an increase in the gig economy, giving people more opportunities of where they could work, a totally different change. And I would say that during this time, a number of people have been rethinking, you know, their balance of work and family, shifting the priorities. So that's all resulted in a lot of the resignations that we're seeing.
Sean, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen, it's interesting, you know, in the first year, so most of 2020, we really didn't see much of a difference. But in the last, I would say 3 months, we've seen a fair number of resignations. And, you know, when we talk to them as they're leaving, the primary reason is money. And so, and we've actually had to try to renegotiate some of our staff. So we've kept a few too by renegotiation their compensation packages. Well, interesting enough, one particular employee, we gave them a raise 3 months ago, pretty hefty raise, and then they came back and they said, "Hey, I got an offer from Deloitte," and you know he wanted us to match it, which we ended up doing. So, and I think that the remote working has been really interesting too, and the most interesting thing about that is I actually had one employee leave because we decided to go fully remote at our company. And so we're exiting out of our space at the end of August, this August coming up when our term is up, and we won't be renewing space, and we've gone completely virtual. And we had one employee resign because they wanted to be in the office more. So I found that interesting. But you know, it's been a very interesting last couple months for us, and it's particularly troublesome for us as a consulting company when you know we make money on our people, right? So if we don't have people, or our product is people, and if our product gets more expensive, then that's problematic. And if we can't get access to product, then that's problematic too.
Hector?
Right. Well, my answer is going to be combined research and statistics that bear out our experience with our clients and ourselves, for that matter. But 3 million people quit their jobs every month of 2021, which is amazing. And flexibility, 56% indicated that their primary reason to look was flexibility, which I find surprising, a little above pay and job security. And a lot of them are planning, you know, our surveys show that 1 in 3 were planning to look for a new job once the pandemic subsided. And I think we are at that stage right now. And if you go by demographics, 1 in 3 millennials were considering leaving. So that Great Resignation or big resignation, it's been real. Of course, it's been of great benefit, if you will, to our company, but a major challenge for our clients.
Thank you, Hector. And Hector Del Castillo will ask the next question. We do have a slide, however, that I'd like to show very briefly, if you can. Yes. Hector dug this up from McKinsey, and it shows that throughout the first half of 2022, that 64% of employers expect voluntary turnover to remain elevated. So that is something to keep in mind as we move forward. And Hector Del Castillo will ask the next question.
Great. Thank you, Laurie. The next question has to do with what is the impact to CEO priorities within companies to see this greater employee turnover than they've had in the previous years. And this is all, what's been happening for the last few months of 2021 and well into 2022. And this particular question is for Hector Velez first. How has, in your experience, how has this affected this sort of like flight of employees affected organizations, employers, and what does that do to their priorities? What are the top CEO priorities in 2022?
Right. So there are two sides of the coin here. One is talent management and talent acquisition. Talent management has more to do with retention. Are we doing all the things that we're supposed to be doing to keep our employees? Before we worry about talent acquisition, new people, what are we doing with our current staff? They're here. So that's being revisited by our clients and employers out there. They're revisiting the employee experience, the candidate experience, work-life balance, the employer brand, being an employer of choice. The newer generations are looking for purposeful enterprises or organizations. So as I like to say, CEOs are trying to find a way to connect purpose to profit. Employee well-being has become a key element in things they're looking at. Compensation, they have to look at it internally and externally, because the apple cart has been upset because people are holding out for higher pay and they're getting it. So they're being forced to do pay market adjustments that they were not prepared for.
Great. Thank you so much, Hector. Stephanie, on your side, what have you seen with your clients?
I'm seeing some of the things that they've mentioned in terms of raising wages, as Sean was giving examples, employees coming back. I'm also seeing a focus on personalization and really taking each of the experiences like Hector was mentioning and trying to personalize it to the employees so they find more meaning. The other thing is a big push from the top down to really look at all of the positions. And, prior to the pandemic, we didn't think employees could work remotely in a lot of companies. They were forced on a dime to do it. And now that we've been working remotely, and Sean was mentioning what his company was doing, is to really rethink the positions, what are the skills that are needed, what has to be done currently, and we've expanded the pool from where we can draw employees.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I want to point out, Sean, do you have any other comments? You mentioned earlier that you have been struggling in doing this. What is it doing to your priorities that you had set for the year?
Oh, I have lots of comments. Yeah, this has been kind of interesting for us because, again, as a consulting company, we make money on our staff, right? And we are directly related to the cost of our product, right? It is our direct cost. And when the direct cost goes up, it starts squeezing things. What's interesting is that we use a system called Bamboo HR, and Bamboo does what's called an employee net promoter score, ENPS. And they do it twice a year. It's completely run automatically. We don't have any say in it. And our scores have been consistently very high, right? Anywhere from 55 to 65. They actually went up in 2020. We did a lot of really proactive and over communication when the pandemic first hit, and we were very blunt with people on what our revenue targets are and what we need to do. And if we didn't make them, we had triggers. So we were extremely blunt on what was going on, and it paid off. Our net promoter score actually just ran, and it's still high. It's as high as it's ever been. Yet we're having people resign for, mostly for money. And I think that, one of the things that we're also doing is we just redid our brand. So if you go to winward.com, you can see our entire new brand. We just launched it like a month ago, and we spent most of the half of 2021 doing that and working with an outside firm, marketing firm, to help us rebuild our brand and retell our story. And a big part of that was the employee engagement and what is our story to our employees, why are they here? And we're using it now as part of our recruiting. So all of our new recruiting advertisements and things like that are going out with our new brand. And so we're very much focused on how to improve our employee experience, and getting better at appraisals, getting better at training programs, because it can't all be about money, right? And I can't constantly fight the dollar, right? We have to create a culture where people come here and they feel like they're fairly paid, and but also have a great team to work with, a flexible organization, an understanding management team when we talk about work-life balance and what they need. And work-life balance, the term work-life balance has changed dramatically in the last 24 months. So we're spending a lot of time trying to talk to our employees and understand that, and even taking a very individual approach to what they need to be happy here, both in professional development, balance, compensation, all across the board. But I would tell you that, like, one of the hardest things that we're doing right now, it is the right thing for us to be remote. We can operate and we can be as productive as we've ever been being remote. And I was the guy that basically said I wanted my leadership team around me. So a leadership team was always in the office, and I always had this idea. I've abandoned that idea because I don't think it's required. But employee engagement and loyalty and making them feel part of something bigger is just so much harder now. And before we would have bi-weekly or semi-annually all hands, and we fly people in from all over the country. We can't really do that anymore because people don't even want to travel. Our 25th anniversary is coming up, and we talked about, are we going to do a big live event? And the consensus came back, it's like, people don't want to do it. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges for us, is how to get people engaged in a culture where they feel like they are part of a team, they're valued, and they're working for a purpose that's bigger than them. And that's one of our biggest challenges in the remote world.
Very interesting. I just want to point out before we shift to the next question, this is what came out from a Gartner published survey at the end of last year. And they polled various CEOs, and of course, this was before the latest wave of the Omicron, where they responded. And everybody had growth since the previous year, 2020. 2021, it was all about getting back the growth that they had lost before COVID-19 hit. And that was number one. And what happened is that now, it went down. Growth is still a top priority, but it went down by one point. And then a new thing came up, because in 2021, everybody focused on accelerating digital transformation to try to ensure that they had ways of continuing their business model, even if through an e-commerce or online, so to speak, interacting with customers and making more interactive, have a real presence online. And that was all about digital transformation, and a huge acceleration that happened in 2020. Well, in 2021, the same issues that you just are speaking about, that no one foresaw, workforce. And now workforce went from 0 in 2020. There was no emphasis on workforce in 2020. In 2021 says, we are losing our brightest, and we need to regain back our talent, because that is actually hindering our growth plans. And so workforce went from 0 previous year to 24%. And that is the number, the second highest priority right now based on this study. And Gartner is not the only one. McKinsey, Bain, and others have actually published very similar information saying, talent and workforce retention and even acquisition, if you're trying to really accelerate your growth rate and bounce back to where you were before COVID-19, not only it's about retention, you need to acquire new talent. And that's going to be the trick, is how to do that in a way, because at this point, other employers are also competing often for the same talent, especially when it comes to technology experts, because that's where everybody is going to need moving forward, more technology experts to actually get the growth efforts that they're looking to get as they are trying to bounce back into the new economy. Laurie, you have
Yes, thank you, Hector. So I'll direct this at Stephanie initially. So what common workforce issues or trends are you seeing that are impacting employers? And feel free to expound on differences or similarities across industries. And an audience question that we received before the webinar today is, since we have 4 generations in the workforce today, what similarities or differences are you seeing across the generations? So this is quite the loaded question.
It certainly is. I actually have some clients that have 5 generations in the workforce. So,
okay.
Yes. So in terms of industries, as I mentioned, we really work with almost all industries. So we saw really the hardest hit in the hospitality. Also, we work with nonprofits who have direct support employees. And so people that had to be at work and were nervous about the pandemic, we were seeing more shortages there because they could go work somewhere else and not have to be on site dealing with customers or others in that. So we've seen a lot of, the big word the first year for COVID was the P word, pivoting. We saw businesses that pivoted what they were doing, focusing on being more agile and the flexible work. So in terms of the multi-generation workforce, personalization, as I mentioned earlier, is really key. So we found in the millennial generation, which I have some clients that's more than half their workforce, or especially, almost all the new hires are coming in the younger generations. They might think in the first 6 weeks, do they want to stay on with the company or not? So we've really focused on the pre-onboarding and onboarding phases and having that tie in, just as Sean was mentioning, really understanding the mission and making sure the culture and really revamping what we do in this remote time. But we don't want to turn off people when they start. The last thing that a millennial will want is a stack of forms to fill out. And so we've gotten away from a lot of that and really tried to revamp it. And also in the generations, we have changed a lot in the benefits, and just to make it, adding voluntary benefits, for example, so that individuals could customize what's most important for them and for their families.
Thank you, Stephanie. Hector? You're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, so many trends that we're seeing out there and some commonality. I already spoke about compensation. Everything's being looked at, pay market adjustments, starting salaries, even hourly wages. Companies are pulling forward the timing for their merit cycle and the pay review on a 6-month basis going forward. They are formalizing their flexible work environment policies. Before it was like an ad hoc thing, very flexible, but now, no pun intended, but now job seekers are demanding that there's a flexible work policy in place, confirmed and semi-permanent. Wellness programs and increased PTO around US holidays as an added, that innovative benefit. So those are some of the trends we're seeing when it comes to pay and benefits, in addition to the things that Sean and Stephanie were referring to, revisiting the employee experience.
Sean, thank you, Hector.
Yeah, I think we're doing most of that stuff. You know, if we break it down from the benefits perspective, I don't think that the pandemic or the current hiring situation has caused us to take action on our benefits more than just the fact that benefits are just skyrocketing. And, you know, last year we got hit with a 45% increase. And so it forced us back into the market when we went to a PEO and were there for, you know, 7 years. And then all of a sudden we just got hit. We're exploring self-insurance and things like that. Ultimately, what I like to be able to do as the CEO is get our healthcare under control in a way that we can pay more of our healthcare for our employees. So if you've been with the company for 4 years, we pay all your benefits no matter what. I would like to accelerate that, but under the current economic climate, it's almost impossible. And we can have a whole discussion on healthcare bankrupting the United States, small business, another day. Pay raises, you know, we actually did freeze pay in 2020 and 2021. So now we are reestablishing pay increases this year. That was a pretty vocal request, obviously, from our staff, and we wanted to do it, and we finally feel like we're in a position to do it. Whether we're going to do by twice a year, I don't know. I don't really know what that means. If people are looking for, you know, 5% raises every 6 months, I don't know how companies can sustain that, and I don't know how we can sustain it. So we have to kind of think about that, and we haven't been asked for that. We haven't been asked for. So I think, again, when we think about what are we trying to do here, it's and by the way, we have part of our challenge too is that we have an older workforce. Our average employee is 46, and we have not been that successful over the years of bringing in younger generations. We're getting better at that. We've actually hired a number of people recently that are younger generation. We want to do that. We want to bring in that younger generation for a lot of reasons. One, it brings down our overall benefit, our overall health insurance, right? You got healthier people on the plan. It helps us in lowering our average salaries down because, you know, obviously, you know, younger people, you know, first few years of their career. And it also helps us in bringing new thinking into the company, which is very important to us, and having kind of people challenge how we do things as a management team. And our management team is probably, you know, on average, I'm 55, right? And I'm probably the average. So we're about in our 50s average management team. So we could certainly learn some things from our staff of how to do things differently and be more progressive. And I think we're pretty progressive in general, but we could always do better. So that's kind of how we're looking at things and how to, yeah, it's such a multifaceted challenge, right? It's not just, you just can't pull one lever and be like, oh, we're going to see, you know, improvements. You got to pull a lot of different levers and figure out what you can do and what you're able to do from a financial perspective and what you need to do from, you know, recruiting and retainment perspective.
Thank you, Sean. I certainly appreciate the fact that in order to address the current employment environment, that you have to take a broad look and you have to address a number of issues. It's not just one thing, it's 5 and 7 and 10 things that you have to look at. Next chart, please. So this chart shows what benefits that employees value the most. And according to this survey, retirement contributions were top, but right behind that is pay time off, back to some of the points that you guys were making, as well as bonuses. And then childcare support, which we know has been a huge factor during the pandemic.
We've
just
been
wanted to
working
point that out.
on doing a lot of leave benchmarking and designing parental leave programs. And so that's been more common and addressing more of the family needs as well.
Yes,
Oh, good point. Yes.
this is a great point.
So,
And I think this is where, to Sean's earlier point, this is a growing list that and it usually adds overhead to anybody's organization. So, you know, the challenge is, how do you do this? Because if you can't pass this on to your customers or clients, you know, this is actually you need to get very creative as to how to offer this to the right workers within your organization, and then figuring out what that personalization means and how to offer each type of employee the flexibility that they want, right? And I think that's a challenge for most organizations. We're talking about that.
Yeah, I think, Hector, you bring up a good point, right? So that chart's very interesting, right? Because it's a peanut butter approach where, you know, a younger generation might not be not as concerned about retirement contribution, but more interested in paid time off. If you're I run a foundation. We started a foundation 5 years ago called the Alzheimer's Caregiver Alliance, and we support unpaid family caregivers for Alzheimer's patients. If you're dealing with a patient, if you're dealing with a spouse or a parent that's got Alzheimer's, then, you know, helping you have more time off is going to be key. So this is an interesting chart. And some of this, you know, when you go remote, takes care of itself, right? So we have a remote program where we subsidize Wi-Fi, cell phones. We provide equipment to the home and things like that. And we've been working on ways to, like, we don't have a place to store equipment. So if somebody leaves, what do? They're going to send back keyboards and monitors and things like that, $100 worth of shipping charges. So we're actually playing around with the idea of just subsidizing and letting people keep everything because it's just easier that way. But again, Hector, all this goes to overhead, right? And I'm just so sensitive to that because we're in the people business, right? And I have to work within the rates that I have. And if I'm doing government business and I've pre-negotiated rates 3 years ago with a 3% or 2% escalation, then I'm really stuck because I don't have the room to do this. So you're going to have to cut other areas then. So where do you cut? You may have to cut back end support, which means that you may not have as many people helping run the business, which creates all kinds of problems. So,
and there's another benefit that really isn't a high cost benefit. In fact, for a number of my clients, I've gotten it free. It's an EAP, Employee Assistance Program, and it's a benefit that a number of companies have. It was underutilized by employees. It's free for them and helps in a variety of issues that they may be facing, you know, financial, legal, well-being. And it's been one that we've pushed more, both with employers and employees, to take advantage of, because it does provide even extra support during these times.
And you're perfectly in queue for the next question, which is, you know, assessing the impact to companies, which is what this is all about. And I'm going to actually post this particular question about what is the impact, and I would like to actually just ask, you know, how are these workforce trends impacting the company itself? And I think Sean, you already started that particular one, but I wanted to at least get Hector Velez and then Stephanie's point of view on what they're seeing when they're talking to clients.
Hector? You want me to go first, or?
I want Hector to
oh, okay.
Yeah, well, you know, the way it's affected our company, well, first of all, we've been 100% remote for 2 years, and it's been great. We had and also, well, the business side, we had our best year ever in 2021. So that's from our company perspective. And I think, you know, Sean hinted at that in terms of team building and team culture, it's been a little bit of a challenge. But I suggest that with the right leadership in place, that can be accomplished. And it's all about communication, as simple as that. You asked about our clients, how have they been affected? Well, we've talked about that already, but they've had to revisit every single facet of the employee experience, from being a candidate out there to being a longtime employee in the company. And when we get later in the panel, I do have my calls to action that I want to share with the team. But I just wanted to share with you how it's affected our company.
Thank you so much. Sean, you want to expand on what you started earlier? What is the impact of your company? What do you think is going to be a way to move forward for you based on what you're seeing so far?
Yeah, so I mean, the impact, I mean, here's a real life example of impact, right? We have government contracts with the intelligence community. And 6 months ago, we were hiring people with full scope polygraph clearances for 160,000. Now they want 190. And we've even seen some people with specific positions wanting 300, right? The challenge we have is I'm not generally, I don't have a problem with, salary increases or anyone's salary, whatever they think they're worth. The challenge is that when our clients don't understand what's happening out there, or they don't care, right? And that is a really big problem for a company like us, because if you've got a client out there who's basically saying, look, you've got a contractual rate of $125, $145 an hour, which is a pretty darn good rate in the government space. And the person you're trying to hire wants $200,000, or they're looking for unicorns that like have full scope poly with these specific certifications across 3 different types of technologies. Like, we're having a hard enough time finding someone with a certification in one area, let alone 3 in 3 different areas. And they want us to staff it at $125 an hour. It's really, really frustrating, because I feel like there are some clients who have just punted the problem to us, right? And punted it to the government community. And I'm kind of really focused on the government right now. And that's really hard for these contractors, right? Because we've got these rates that we worked with. So that's a real life example. And we basically have said, okay, if we're going to try and compete now, then we have to lower our back end costs. So now we're kind of looking and say, where can we cut? What can we do? We're going to cut back on some of our program management. Is that going to affect our quality of our work that we're going to do and our ability to deliver? So these are the balances that we run through every single day. And what we're doing right now is we actually are pushing back on some of our customers, especially in the commercial area. I was meeting with a friend of mine was talking to somebody in the apartment business, and they want a 33% turnover in the apartment business so they can always continue to raise rates of the apartments, the base rates. And that's kind of how we're thinking about things too, going back to some of our existing customers and saying, look, these rates aren't working. We've had some customers say we understand, because they're seeing the same problem, and we've adjusted rates, and with our new customers, we're raising rates. And then the other challenge we're having is offshore, right? Mm-hmm. So offshore, so the difference between a US rate and say India, Bangladesh, or something like that disparity is growing now. And what's happening is that it's we're getting a lot of customers saying, well, I can go to India and get this for $50 an hour. It's like, yeah, but we can't do it for anything less than 175. So that's a big problem. And I think that's a huge geopolitical problem that US companies are going to have. That being said, we're trying to take advantage of it, right? So we're doing a little bit more investing in offshore companies, and we're starting to move some of our services that we would have done internally, like sales support and things like that, pre-sales work. We're starting to look at outsourcing to the Philippines for that. So because we're forced to, right? So that's what the impact of the business is right now. It's tough.
Very, very interesting. And I wanted to kind of move on to the next question, and Laurie will have that question.
Right. So I see that we are getting towards the top of the hour. So we do have a couple of audience questions. So I'd like to go ahead and get to those. And the first one is, one question from the audience is to please summarize the top things that you would advise. In other words, maybe 3 to 5 things quickly that you would advise CEOs to do in the current employment environment to attract the talent that they need. And I'm going to call on Hector to answer that one. Mute.
Yeah. So these are my calls to action for employers, and they're pretty strategic, but they tactical at the same time. But you got to start up there. You must align talent acquisition with talent management. They cannot be separate. And the changes in compensation out there in the market, bears this out. You can hire people at higher band levels than the people you have internally. You have to align both. I think it's high time to do an employee engagement survey and identify the opportunities for improvement. Review and redesign career structures via a rethink of the traditional. Review and redesign salary structures to ensure parity. Review and redesign a total reward strategy. Connect purpose to profit. It does very well with the newer generations. And improve engagement with stronger career pathing and development opportunities. Adapt to flexible work and always iterate towards a positive employee experience. So those are my my commandments. I don't know if there are 10, but.
Thank you. That was very succinct and a good summary. The next question and the last question is, summarize the things that you would advise CEOs to do to retain the talent that they have. And I'll direct that to Stephanie.
Okay, I think we mentioned earlier, Sean said that he's focused on communication. We are trying to even over communicate these days to make sure that everyone's in the loop, because we've lost out on the water cooler talks and being in the office. So we really need to find ways to communicate. Find ways to focus and keep employees engaged. We've done different training with managers. One of the biggest reasons that an employee leaves is they're unhappy with their manager. Does a manager know? Are there different ways that they would actually manage their employees that are under them during these times? We've also increased the number of stay interviews. And so this is an opportunity for the employer to understand what's important to the employees and for the employees to be able to voice that. Maybe there'll be changes that would be made, but really having that kind of understanding has been critical.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next chart, please. So if you need help overcoming barriers to achieve greater growth, contact us at solutions@byondma.com. Next chart, please. And finally, here's how you can contact Hector and myself. We're happy to have a call with you and to discuss how your situation and how we can help. I want to thank the panelists. They were great discussion today, and everyone who has attended. Have a great day, and we will see you next time.